Hi there, welcome once again to my channel. My name is Alan and thanks for joining me. It's been a little while since I posted, apologies for that. I'm now back in the land of the living, so possibly normal service will be resumed and hopefully you'll find a few more interesting videos heading your way. What we're looking at today is triads. I'll discuss why I'm looking at them shortly, but I've mentioned this on a couple of other videos, which is this concept that you have a base, a mid-coat and a highlight, all within the same sort of colour sequence. So what we're going to take a look at today is some reds. I went last weekend to the local model shop, picked up some Vallejo paints because I want to get a new triad going for my reds. So what I'm going to look at is an 814 burnt red as a dark tone, possibly followed by a 926, which is just a red. Oops, sorry, let me just hopefully, yep, that's gone back in focus. And this is why I'm going to test them. The interesting bit is, what do I do for the top? So I've got a flat red here, which is a colour I've used before. And I've also got a dark vermilion, which I think is a colour that I haven't tried before. And I thought it might be interesting to show you how I go about testing the triads and what I do to sort of label them up. Now, it may or may not be obvious, but underneath here, what we've actually done is I've painted a white undercoat. You might think that's a bit silly, because it's a white piece of paper that I'm using, obviously, but I have painted white paint. This isn't an undercoat that I use anymore. Historically, I've done that and I've used washes, etc., but I much prefer the kind of end result that comes with a black undercoat. So all I've done here is to prep a white piece of paper with some black and some white, just to show you how I go about testing the colour sequence. Now, obviously, this will never translate quite the same on a figure, but at least it does give you a really good visual representation as to what the effect might look like. So up here I'm going to put a couple of blobs, oops, of the darkest colour that we've got, because I've got a burnt red here that I'm just testing out, and as I said, all I've done is shaken it so that we can just see what the effect is. And I've got a big old brush here. This is well, in fact, do you know what, I don't even know where this brush came from. It's a size 1, and all I do is make sure that I get enough of the paint spread around. And then what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to put the paints next to each other, and then I'm also going to overlap them, because it's that overlapping bit I'm interested in. What's the colour graduation like on these particular paints? So, and the reason I'm doing two is that I'm going to test one with the final coat as being a flat red and one with the vermilion red that I saw earlier. So we'll pause the video there, just make sure that these dry sensibly, and I'll give you guys a shout back. Okay, so I've dried these off over a fire, which obviously, go careful if you're going to do that with it being paper. I've kept it at quite a nice distance, and you can see it's virtually dry now. So what's next? Well, simply take the next one in the sequence, the 926, give it another shake, and then what I'm going to do is just repeat the blobs that I put in earlier, just to see what the effect is when I start to run this up against the other paint. So again, what we're going to do here, and you'll notice that this is a little bit thinner. Maybe I haven't shaken it as well, but I do tend to find that reds are thinner, and what I'm looking at is a little bit of overlap and a little bit of an idea of the contrast. And as I said, this is not, you know, an exact science in terms of how it will play out with figures, but I do find it's a really useful way of validating the triad. Make sure we've got a nice overlap there, and that we do enough here to overlap the top colour. Now, this undercoat, this burnt red, is looking quite browny on this sort of triad. I don't know if that's coming over quite so well on the camera. So what we're going to do is pause it again, dry the paint off again, and then come back. Okay, so I've dried them off again. Again, I'd recommend going very careful if you're going to try and accelerate the drying. Maybe use a hairdryer or something like that. Just something safe that you're not coming anywhere near a naked flame. So just to reiterate, we're trying now. The options are this flat red or the dark vermilion that I've shown you. So that's why I've got the two sets here. We'll have one for each. So if I take the dark vermilion first, and we'll put that here on the right hand side, sorry, on the left hand side of each one. And again, we'll put a nice little blob, and then take the paint again. Just for my own benefit, I'm going to put V for vermilion there, just briefly. And again, we're trying to overlap, but also stand it on its own. I'm thinking about what that would look like. This is why it's important to go over the other paint, because you need to understand the coverage there. And you can see it's quite thin. And that is a common problem with reds. So let me just put a little bit more there. Certainly over a black undercoat. Do a little bit more there to get an even feel. Right, so I'm going to clean off the brush and try the next coat. Okay, so what we're doing now is the flat red. And apologies, the gloss actually is quite interesting effect, shall we say, in terms of the autofocus on this camera. Okay, and again, I'm just going to FR for flat red, just so that I know what to expect. Take the brush again and run this over. And as I say, this is not necessarily the best way, because obviously you want to put them on a figure. All I would say is, just on this initial view, I've got more concerns about the brown undercoat, perhaps, or the brownie effect of the undercoat, than I have about the top coat. You can see quite, for me visually, there's little difference at the moment between the flat red and the vermilion, but it is important to let it dry thoroughly. So try and get some of the better coverage on there. So I'm going to again quit the video, dry those off, and show you what they look like. Okay, here are the results of my experiment. As you can see, the flat red is noticeably providing less coverage, shall we say, than the vermilion. Now that might be just simply because I haven't shaken it well enough, or it may just be a thinner mix. But obviously there's quite a stark contrast there. Now that can be okay for a highlight. I'm tempted, and I know it sounds a bit mad, but to opt primarily for the flat red, just because it might provide a slightly less stark tonal difference. I'm also going to take another look at this burnt red colour again, and what I found on the bench is actually a dark red. So what I'm going to try is just shake that one up, and I'm going to put it in a couple of places. I'm going to put one there, and I'm going to put one down here, just so that we can get a bit of a look at what that might bring us if we were to use a slightly different approach. And maybe it's a bit awkward going over the other red, but I'm just thinking, what does that look like as an alternative? And the only comment I would make is, even though that's clearly marked as a dark red, how much real difference there is between that and the simple red that we had earlier, I'm not convinced. So if you look at the bases, oops, sorry, let me just show you that. Hopefully that will reseat itself. Let me just. Now, it's probably not that clear from that angle, but I think you'd struggle to notice tonally much of a difference there. So even though one is a dark red and one is a red, for me that's too close. That's not going to provide the depth of colour. So I'm going to stick with the burnt red, and I think the only consideration I've got is that it's going to look a little bit browny. Now this isn't the only triad that I've got for red. I just thought I'd show you a bit of experimentation and how I go about selecting them. Final thing for me is to put some indicator on here about what I'm doing with it. So that's base, and I'm going to call that B, as in it's a slightly browner base. It doesn't really matter what you put on here, but this is just a neat way of keeping track on things. We're going to use this red as the mid, and again I'm going to put B for brown so I know what I'm doing in terms of alignment. And I am going to try the highlight, and again B. So we'll keep those three together, and then this vermilion, which is obviously a lot brighter, I'm going to put that as high opt, and then B. And maybe actually on the figures themselves we'll have a good look at what that brings. But thanks for watching. Hope that was of interest, and as always, got any hints and tips you want to make some comments that others can read and share, that'd be great. And if you've got a better way of doing it, then please share it with us and I'll happily investigate myself. Thanks for watching. See you soon.